Hello friends, welcome to C# Intermediate to Advanced tutorial. You are watching part 4 of the subseries C# reflection get type information. So in this video we will display assembly related information. That means we will implement the button click of get assembly info. So we will implement this part now. So in the first video we talked about reflection and assembly. Then we created a test class. After that we talked about the example, what we are going to do. Now let's proceed with the coding part. So assembly class is packed in system.reflection namespace. So it represents the compiled binary unit. It can be a exe or it can be a DLL. Via the utility methods, one can retrieve the below assemblies. Entry point assembly. So the method is GetEntryAssembly. Then calling assembly. You can get calling assembly using the GetCallingAssembly. Then executing assembly. So this is the method to retrieve that GetExecutingAssembly. So all these, if you see, it returns an instance of type assembly. So that's what here we are discussing, assembly class. Once you retrieve assembly class, then you can retrieve further information. So the picture beside explains these assemblies. We already saw that once, and let's assume that there is an exe, abc.exe. abc.exe is calling some function in z1.dll, and fx calls fx2, and let's say fx2 is in some more DLL called z2.dll, right? So let's state that here you are making call to this function. Let's assume that this is a c1, and this is the place you are making call to c1. You are making call to c1 here in fx2. That means you are making call to GetEntryAssembly, GetCallingAssembly, GetExecutingAssembly. Here if you see, this exe is the entry assembly. Why? Because when you launch the application, ABC launches, and that's the entry point. Then in subsequent manner other DLLs are loaded. So this is the entry point assembly. Then here you are making call at c1. So when you ask what is the entry point assembly, you will get ABC. Then when you call what is the calling assembly, you will get z1.dll, and executing assembly is z2.dll. So here if you say if there is an intermediate assembly x2.dll, then this will not come into picture. So here when you make a call to get entry point, this one will get retrieved. Calling is z1, and x2 will come into picture only when you go to this specific assembly, calling assembly, and from there if you make a call to calling assembly, then you will get x2.dll. So that's all you have to know here. Once you have the assembly in hand, you can get basic information about it by using the get custom attributes. So previously we saw the attributes set through the properties, right? So we retrieved the properties for our DLL and we shown it to you in one of our previous video. So the same information you can retrieve using the get custom attributes. So for that, first you have to have a correct assembly instance. Then you can make a call to get custom attributes and retrieve whatever information you want. Here, if you see, first we make a call to GetEntryAssembly. So we write that in our DLL to test assembly. That's the DLL project we created, right? So this is the DLL part, and here I will be showing the exe part. So we write a function called display assembly names, and we receive our text box, multi-line text box as a parameter here. Alright, our DLL project, it makes call to GetEntryAssembly, and here if you see, we are directly making use of class name assembly.getEntryAssembly. That means all these methods are a static method. So we have entry assembly, calling assembly, and executing assembly by making call to the relevant methods. After that, since we have text box, we are clearing the text box, and since here I just taken this part, very first assembly, entry assembly dot get name, then we are displaying the name, then entry assembly dot location property that gives the location. In between we are adding the new line character. So same stuff we are doing for other assemblies as well. Here if you see, this is for calling assembly, and this piece of code is for executing assembly. Alright, now our class library exposes a function called display assembly names, and now when user clicks this button, here if you see, using to test reflection, that's our DLL name, x.dll project that delivers to test reflection.dll. So in our exe project we are making reference to that. After that, in the get assembly info click, we are creating an instance of our test class. So this is DLL, right? And our exe has a reference to this DLL project. So once the exe has reference to this DLL project, it can retrieve all its type information. So here I'm directly creating the test class, passing 4 and a string. So this two information is not actually required. So just for example, I created it like this. What's important here is now I am making call to display assembly names. So this is a specific method, and txt info display. So there is a multi-line text box here, right? And passing that instance here. So that will received here as a text box, and txt, right? Txt append text we are calling everywhere. That means once you retrieve this information, once we retrieve the assembly name and location, we will update our multi-line list box. Now it's demo time. Let's go to the demo. So here we will open our test class. and in our test class we will introduce a method so code we already saw in the PowerPoint slide. So now our DLL to test reflection. So this is the executing assembly which makes call to assembly related function. So when you call assembly.getExecutingAssembly, since you are calling this on the toTest reflection project, and toTest reflection, I mean you are calling that in a function that's exposed by the test class. So we wrote a function called a display assembly name, right? Display assembly names. And so the executing assembly means test class. Test class is in toTest reflection.dll. The DLL is an assembly. So GetExecutingAssembly will retrieve toTest reflection.dll, or the assembly that denotes this DLL. All right. Here calling and executing assembly both are same. Why? Because we are going to make a call to this function from our exe project. We will do that next. So from class view, we will switch to Solution Explorer, and in the Solution Explorer, this is our exe project, right? We will expand it. Here I already have toTest reflection. If it is not there, then you can add a reference. So right click, choose add reference. So you can either go to browse and add a DLL as a reference, or since both projects are in the same solution, it's easy to add a reference using the project. So in the project tab, since we already have toTest reflection, click on OK, and you can see the reference get added here. After this, go to the form, view code. Then here you can actually place the reference. So use control spacebar so that here you can see the namespace for toTest reflection. Next, we should handle the button click event for GetAssembly info. Here, if you see, we are creating test class. This test class is from toTest reflection. Here you can see toTest reflection namespace is also toTest reflection and test class. So we are creating the instance of test class, and there is only one constructor here that it takes an integer and a string. So we are just constructing it. After that, from our test class, we are making call to display assembly name, and we pass instance of our text box. Text info display, and here is our display assembly name, and it takes a text box instance. Now we will rebuild the solution. And here if you see, we have two output. One is our DLL output and another one is our exe output. So these both compiled units are called assembly, and this one will be the entry assembly as well as calling assembly, and this one is the executing assembly. Now let's execute this. Here if you see, you are getting this is the entry point assembly as already told, and this one is the calling assembly. So both entry point and calling assembly are same, and this one is our executing assembly. Just now you watched the demo. Thank you for watching. Bye.